Hi, and welcome back to the Athlete to Alumni webinar. This series will cover all things related to transitioning from the student athlete to alumni role and teach you what you can do to help guide this transition before you graduate. Each week, we'll cover a specific career industry or a student community to connect you with alumni who have had successful transitions themselves and allow them to give you advice on what you will need to prepare for. My name is Tim Bryson, he, him pronouns, and currently serve as the program director for student athlete career development here at the University of Maryland, and I will be the host for today. This episode will cover the international student athlete experience, and joining me today for this discussion are Saint and Mikella. I'm super excited to jump into this episode, but we cannot go any further without first doing introductions. And so we'll first start with Saint, just telling us more about who you are, a little bit about your story, before moving into Mikella to introduce herself next.
Hey Tim, thanks for having me, man, and say hi to Mikella and Megan as well. So, like you mentioned, my full name is Widner Saint Cyr. I go by Saint because that's what my teammates called me. Especially, I got that name when I came here.
Oh, wow.
So Saint Cyr, I guess, was too long to call on the field. So the shorter your name is when you're on the field, the easier it is. So they called me Saint, and then that nickname's been stuck ever since, and I like it, to be honest. So a little bit of background. I'm from Haiti originally. I was born and raised in Haiti. So came to the US when I was 17. Of course, I moved in New York with my uncle. And then after that, shortly after, I moved to UMD, attending college, of course, there. So I was on a scholarship with the soccer team. Our graduating class was 2013. So throughout my time here, of course, I majored in criminology and criminal justice, and I had a minor in leadership. And of course, won a few ACC championships, I think like 3. So it's Maryland, that's what we do, right? Yeah. And 2 Final Four appearances, as well as one championship game. Unfortunately, didn't win any national championship, but I guess the boys just did it recently. That's good.
Yeah.
Got a younger brother and an older sister, both living in Haiti. Immediate family, most of them are in Haiti. So I'm currently here in the US in St. Louis, Missouri. Attending law school. I'm finishing my 2nd year right now, and currently married to Seisha Saint Cyr, Michigan native.
No, I appreciate that, Saint. Thank you for the introduction. And we'll talk more about your journey to the U.S., but also your alumni experience as well after Mikella introduces herself.
Hello, my name is Mikella Lefebvre Otis. Thanks, Tim, for the intro. I was born and raised in Montreal, Quebec, in Canada. I came to the U.S. to be a high jumper on the track and field team. I originally came to the U.S. in 2016. I was at UCLA for 2 years. And then I transferred to the University of Maryland in 2018, and I graduated just recently in June 2020 or May 2020. So that was an interesting experience in itself, finishing with the COVID year. But yeah, it was great. I loved my time here at Maryland, so much so that I'm still here training. So I was a sociology undergrad major, so kind of similar to criminal justice and such, in the School of Behavioral and Social Sciences. And yeah, I went to nationals in 2019. I went to the NCAA first round, which we call regionals, every year since 2016. And yeah, I'm currently in a master's degree at Concordia University in Montreal, and I'm actually going to start my PhD in sociology at the University of California, Santa Barbara in the fall. So a lot of exciting things to come.
Awesome. Thank you, Mikella. And with Widner and Mikella, myself in the terminal degree program, Maggie, you next. You next. Nothing's going to bleed off into you. But before we talk about even the alumni experience, I think it would be remiss if we didn't talk about you all's individual unique journey to the United States. So say you mentioned coming when you were 17, Mikella, you came when you started at UCLA, which I know you'll dive into, but the NCAA model is unique to the United States. And so when did you know you wanted to compete, but also be a student in U.S. higher education and make the decision to pursue that at Maryland? We can start with Mikella this time.
I think it's and I think every international student has a different story. My dad's American, so and he played in the NCAA. He actually ran track in the NCAA. So I kind of had that early exposure. But I think what I've heard from a lot of international students, kind of when you get into the sport and you start thinking to yourself, okay, I'm kind of good at this, like, but it's kind of a stressor. Like, am I going to make it to the US? Am I going to get recruited? Is that even a possibility? And it's kind of hard to navigate that process. I think it's easier and more integrated into the school system for US students, where they have recruits coming to games and competitions, and they're in that whole cycle. It's not the same thing for international students. We kind of have to put ourselves out there. Yeah, I would say the process was interesting in itself because I had to reach out to schools, but I'm very happy that I did. And then it's kind of like you get the offers from these big schools and you're like, oh my gosh, am I really going to go to the US? And then you make your decision like every other US student, you know. But I think the introductory process to the recruiting part of the NCAA system is nerve-wracking, especially for international students. But yeah, I got in because early exposure, put myself out there, and then I took my visits and made my decision.
And then you started at UCLA, but why Maryland?
Okay, Maryland was, so I decided the coaching situation wasn't great at UCLA, and it's a tough decision as an international student. And I know Saint can probably talk about this as well. You come from another country to come to the US, right? So, and you're focused on your sport. You're coming to this other country specifically to play that sport. So there's a lot of pressure there, and it's easy to kind of lose sight of the academic piece. And so when I made my decision, athletically, it wasn't really working at UCLA after my second year. So I decided I was going to transfer, and my decision this time, which wasn't the first time as a freshman, this decision now was more what's going to make the most sense academically and athletically. And after speaking with Coach Valman, who is a great mentor and a great coach till this day, it made sense to come to Maryland because it was a great combination of a great athletic program and a great academic opportunity as well. So it was more of a balanced situation. I was older, so I could make a more sound decision. So yeah.
Definitely, thank you. And then Saint, how about you? Talk to us about your recruitment process, why Maryland, all the above.
Picking Maryland for me, that was easy on that time because it was 2008. So they had just won the national championship. So that alone had already done it for me. Yeah. Plus they had a great relationship with my, with the academy, New York Red Bulls, the club I was playing for at the time. So for me, the process was sort of course, similar to what Mikella just explained. Just I had moved here from Haiti, right? And then I was in New York with my uncle, playing with the New York Red Bulls Academy and in training with the first team as well, because I was in the process of signing with them. And then, but from the get-go, I did know I wanted to get at least an American education, right? So that was my goal, get an American education and play professional football in the process at the end. So, but whichever came first, I would have taken. Right, the opportunity to sign pro came, right, and then at the same time, Maryland came into the picture. So Coach Sasha Sirovsky started coming to my games and watching the games, and then expressed interest in having me play for Maryland. I was like, yes, that's like, I was in a limbo, basically. I wanted to play professionally. I also wanted a college education, but my family was like, nah, you're gonna have to go to school, and that's not an option. I was like, sure. And then I went to school, of course. It was fun. It was fun. Making the decision was sort of challenging as well because there were other top schools in the picture. But at the end of the day, Maryland showed a little bit more interest in terms of coming consistently every weekend to my games. So I sort of became familiar with Sasha, with Rosso and Rob. These were the three recruiting coaches I was working with. So I became familiar with them. So almost instantly sort of became my friends. And then I laid out the process and then the project and what I could accomplish there. And I ultimately made the decision to go to Maryland, of course, after I went there. And then further reiterated that they actually are the best, right? Mikella can actually say they are the best.
We can reiterate that as well. I want to thank y'all for sharing more about y'all's recruiting process and decision to attend Maryland. But it's no secret, right? Anyone that has access to Google will, Google y'all's names and will realize that y'all are elite athletes in y'all sport, both in the U.S. but also in your home countries as well. And so, at what point, I know Mikella touched on it a little bit, did you all begin to consider, life after competition, right? Whether I was pursuing law school, whether I was pursuing your master's, your doctoral degree, Mikella, but like, when did you realize and start to prepare for life after Maryland, but really life after competition as well? We can start with Saint this time.
Right. For me, this process was sort of, I can say that when I was in Maryland, so I knew I wanted to play professional football. After that, I was like, okay, the education part is taken care of, so I need to go and play professionally, right? So I was not thinking about grad school at all after college. I was like, I'm done with school, right? So I went and signed with Arizona United. It's a USL pro team. As I was like getting towards the end of my first season with them, right? So my injuries, when I was in college, throughout college, I had so many injuries, right? And then my injuries were still persisting. And then I just knew that, well, since I cannot continue, I just didn't want to continue playing football anymore because I kept on getting hurt too much. It was a matter of time before they cut me, right? So I sort of ended it myself earlier so I could give myself some time to think what I wanted to do after that. So my immediate thought after playing professional was just go ahead and enter the workforce, right? So immediately after that, I stopped after the first season and went and worked with one of the nonprofit organization, Bethesda, Maryland, actually, a job which I got through my connection at Maryland. So it was Dahlia. She was a tutor at Maryland. She was tutoring the football team. So she sort of knew all the student athletes and everything. So she helped me get my first job. And then after my first job, I spent a few years in the workforce and I coached soccer on the side with Potomac. And as I was going through, I just decided I sort of wanted more. I needed to do more in terms of education. And then I think law school was the first thing that came to mind because after I left my first job and then I ended up working for a State Farm agent, right? And then I was selling all sorts of insurance in a sense, basically all of them. A lot of times I found myself when State Farm, for instance, underwriting is cutting or increasing a customer's price, right? I found myself fighting for the customer instead of just wanting to sell a bigger policy and making money. And I was like, I guess business is not for me in a sense, because I found it more necessary to fight for people who weren't there or couldn't find it for themselves. So that's why I ended up ultimately going to law school.
I appreciate that. How about you, Mikella? When you start to prepare more critically, more seriously about life after competition?
I think my situation is a bit unique because I feel like a lot of us were kind of thrown into thinking about life after sports because it was just everything was shut down after March because of COVID. And I've had this conversation with other current now alum that were my age last year, student athletes, and it definitely was like a sudden shock. But I mean, I was applying to grad school, so I was obviously in the process of thinking about all that stuff. And I wish I would have prepared a little bit more throughout my college years. I think that like freshman and sophomore year, I was kind of like, I'm not going to think about the future. I'm here to play sports and I'm an athlete and this is what I'm going to do. And then junior year was kind of like, okay, I'm a little bit older. I'll go to one networking night a semester. And then senior year was kind of like, ooh, okay, it's March and now you can't compete outdoors. So you really need to think about what you're going to do. I think what helped kind of push me to think about grad school and stuff like that was my relationship with faculty members, which kind of exposed me to the possibility of a career in academics. So that's what it was for me. My relationships and talking to different people was what guided me to decide to apply to grad school. and yeah, I would say, but anyways, if there was advice that I could give to other international students once you get here, try to go to networking nights, even if it's just for practice. Have conversations with as many people as you need to. And I think it's okay also to have interests in a bunch of different things. And I think just as Saint said, you went back and coached for Potomac. I think that, a life after sports doesn't have to mean you don't play sports anymore. You're not involved in sports anymore. I'm an alumni. I'm not a student athlete anymore, but I'm still involved with the track team. I know a lot of people do that. It's just because your college career ends doesn't mean that your involvement with sports needs to end.
I'm glad you said that, because Maggie and I have been saying that for months, at least 2 years now. But I want to take us back to Mikella, your COVID graduation. Shout out to 2020 graduates. And Saint, your graduation back in 2013, right? And as a student athlete, we all know, right? The academic support, the travel, the food, whatever perks you get from being a student athlete within the college or campus community. Being a student athlete in a lot of ways can be fun. It can be stressful a lot of times, but it's definitely fun as well, being former student athletes ourselves. But once y'all graduated and y'all were no longer a student athlete, what was the biggest adjustment you had to make? Or like, when did you realize, like, oh snap, like I'm not a student athlete anymore after graduating?
Saint, do you want to go?
Sure, I'll go. Well, for me, the biggest one was just my environment. It changed drastically. It's just I came from an environment where everybody was almost like my brothers and sisters and parents when it comes to the coaches and all. And it came to, well, I need to reintroduce myself to people. I need to form new relationships, and then they're not going to have the same foundation. Of course, they're not going to be as strong as they were when I was playing for the soccer team, right? So, like Mikella was talking about, now I'm still in group chats with a lot of student athletes that were there with me when I was at Maryland. So it was just forming new relationship, and then knowing that as a student athlete, I would say, I mean, you are privileged as a student athlete. So compared to other students and other people. So we had a lot of things provided to us, a lot of guidance, right? But when you step off campus, so you're on your own, right? And then you cannot rely on everybody. So that's when you start really thinking about making the right judgment calls. They became important. So I think that was the biggest adjustment for me, knowing that, well, I need to do this, but I don't have as many resources available to me. I don't have that many people I can go to. So I had to learn to do a lot of things on my own in that sense. And I think being a student athlete, of course, prepared me in that sense, especially from the competitive side of things.
Good point.
I would resonate a lot of things that Saint said. I would say going back home after being away for 4 years I had a culture shock when I came in 2016 when I came to the US. And I thought I wasn't going to have a culture shock. I'm from Canada, it's a few hours away. Like, it's all good. No, I came in with this culture shock. And I think there's also even if my dad's American, there was a language barrier since I speak mostly French at home. So it was a culture shock when I came here. And after 4 years, it was a culture shock to come back. So I went back home and I was like, ooh, things are different. I don't have the same friends. My circles are different. My environment is different. And you build a network within the US, right? They tell you to network. So you network with people, you go to networking nights, you talk to, faculty and industry people all in the US. You go back home and it's kind of like, whoo, I need to build my own network now at home. So that was a shock for me. So it was a culture shock coming back home, and it was a shock to be like, ooh, okay, I need to make new relationships. I need to reach out now to different people that I haven't had the opportunity to do because I was 4 years in the US. The lack of structure was all, which kind of resembles what Saint was saying. Everything is mapped out for you as a student athlete, which is great because you really don't have time to do all of that stuff. So, but once you get out of that, it's kind of like, ooh, you're on your own now. There's no one telling you to go to class. No one's reminding you to get on your grades. And in grad school, no one's going to tell you what to do. So Yeah, I mean, lack of structure and come back home, that was a shot. You guys are, woo, yes. So yeah, I would say that. And if there was anything I could say to international students that are going to watch this, if you can try to think about if you want to build a life in the US or you want to build a life back home, I would say think about that probably after your second year when you try to think about what you want to do with your career. And if you can, try to network with people in both countries so that you're not, graduating and stranded. So, yeah.
No,
That's well
that's
said.
important. That's
Go
important.
ahead,
What she
Saint.
just said.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's it's like the difference in culture and structure and everything. US is different compared to, I'd say, all countries in a sense.
Yeah.
So you need to figure out. I mean, I don't want to say figure out, but at least you need to start the process of thinking about what you want to do after school. So if you're a top athlete, almost certain that you're gonna make it pro here. That's awesome, right? So you go there, but you gotta think beyond that. So sports in America, especially for college athletes, it may not last as long, to be honest. So unless you make it all the way to the NBA, all the way to the NFL and things like that. So any other sports is just it's just not the same. And then financially it won't be the same. Structurally it won't be the same. So you might not even last as long. So you need to start thinking beyond that. What do I want to do? Do I want to go back home, or do I want to stay here and then get a job here? Yeah, these are things you need to talk about. Of course, they do have people at school you can definitely have these discussions with.
This is good. I'm gonna transition this to segment 2 because I think it more so aligns with the conversation right now from a career readiness standpoint. And to both Mikella and Saint's point, for international students, this is what I'm hearing working with them now. Some know they want to stay in the US, some, they know they want to go back home or to another country. And so to Mikella's point, it's like you kind of got to network in both areas. And so talk to us more about like, when did you realize, or are you still considering whether you want to stay in the US to work, go to another country to work in your career industry, but like, how did you make that decision, not just on where you wanted to live and work, but also the career industry that y'all chose to pursue as undergraduates?
I'll go with that one. My experience for that one is a little bit different. I would say it could be a little bit different than Mikella's. So when I came here, I left Haiti. So Haiti, I'm sure you guys are probably familiar with the situation in Haiti, right? So when I came here, when I left Haiti, so the plan was never to go back to live in Haiti again, right? But the plan was to get something better, right? In a sense, it didn't have to be in the United States. It could be somewhere else, for instance, in Europe, like with a different team, right? So that is when college was not the first priority, right? It could be like, I came here, right? I played a little bit. And then after that, hopefully I'll find another team in Europe and go play there. So the plan was to be overseas, right? Not a specific country, but to be overseas as long as possible to build something financially for myself where I could help my family in the process. Right. So that sort of made the decision or make the planning process, that made the planning process for me a little bit easier and predictable. So I was like, I know after college, so the plan wasn't to go straight back to Haiti. The plan was to find something else to do. So after what I just learned in college, find something else to make something out of it. And then I can help my family. You know what I mean? So I had already planned it to be overseas for as long as possible.
Mikella, how's yours different, if at all?
I think it's a little bit different in terms of, I think Montreal, like home, is a little bit closer. So it's kind of easier to try to think about wanting to go back home or not. I will say that, so I decided about my senior year, fall semester, that I wanted to explore a career in academics. So I had this undergrad mentor that is a sociology professor at Maryland. Shout out to Chris Marsh, love her. And she really helped me navigate the process. And I think if students can find that one person or a few people that you really trust that have a good grasp of the industry or the career, whatever that you're interested in, and just blast them with questions. And that's just what I did with her. I was asking her, and I was kind of asking her, so my research interests are race and ethnicity, and especially as it relates to multiracial identity. So it's very niche. And I was asking her, because she's also, her research interests are race and ethnicity. So I was asking her, like, this is what I want to do. Does it make sense for me to go back home? Does it make sense for me to stay here? Tell me what you know about the industry and what makes more sense. And so I took a little bit from what she said, talked to other professors and asked them a little bit, and it's taken a little bit here and there and kind of building my perception or my idea of what I want. I will say at first it was kind of like, oh, I'm going to go back home. I'm going to go back home. Like, home is what I thought that I knew. And then I went back home and I was like, this is not what I want. So I think that if people can try to do an internship in the summer here, if you have time, and then an internship in the summer at home, if you can find one, just so you can try to see if the environment is what you want. But I think it also has to kind of make sense with what you want to do and what you want for your own personal life, because, you know, different places, different environments have different, you know, it's a different culture, it's a different way of living. So it's kind of different, and try to see what you want. But for me, it was definitely my relationship with people that have careers and asking them. They were able to guide me.
That's really true. And then to follow up with what Mikella just said, really, so internships, they are actually great starting points. So when I was in Maryland, right, my senior year, I started interning with it's a nonprofit organization. It's called Madu Williams Foundation, right? Madu Williams actually graduated from the University of Maryland. So what he's doing, he is helping school kids in disadvantaged neighborhoods, right? He would go to elementary schools in these areas, and those kids who are underperforming, he would set up after school programs, right? Where he brings in student athletes or current or past college kids come in and help these kids, right? And the program like gives the kid, I guess, one meal, and then it helps them with homework, and then teaches them like life skills. It's a great thing. That actually helped me figure out that I want to be in the service industry, service in a sense where I actually serve people, right? It doesn't matter at what capacity. I just wanted to make sure that I feel happy when I do something for somebody, and then that person, I don't know, benefits from whatever it is that I did. So I think these are great ways to establish what you might want to do post college.
I kind of want to say something about that. It just came to mind. Exactly what he was saying. I think that if you can, even if you have a bunch of interests, usually it all comes down to one thing. Like either if it's you are interested in marketing and you're interested in, but you kind of also want to go to law school, but you also are kind of interested in research. And it's kind of like, oh, what is the one thing that brings all of those things, all of those interests together? And usually it's one or a few things. And if you can, the faster you can kind of narrow that down, it'll be so much easier to guide you through your college experience and your life after college.
That's well said. And this next question, I'll make sure I read it verbatim because Megan did a good job putting it together. But I'm very curious to hear y'all's answers because Saint, your experience at Maryland, of course, winning, conference championships, playing title game, playing pro, dope. They're going to law school, like win the world. Mikella, you being too humble, obviously McNair Scholar, direct admin and doc programs, which we're going to talk about this next piece. So Maryland May in itself was not created when y'all came here initially, right? Saint definitely wasn't created. Mikella, we were just getting started when we got here. And so while you were either at Maryland, Mikella, but definitely Saint, when you were graduated and playing pro, how did y'all prepare for a career in law or a career to pursue your doc? Were there other university offices, campus, functional areas that helped you in that transition? Saying when you're playing pro, like how did you even begin to prepare for the LSAT or even think about which school to apply for? Just talk to us more about like how did you even get into this? Because again, like our unit, which is something that we tout for current student athletes, like y'all didn't have that when y'all were at Maryland as current student athletes.
All right, Mikella, answer first. You can go.
Don't be humble.
um,
Don't be humble. Now's not the time.
so, yes, I did do the McNair Scholars Program. So it's a research intensive, they call it a fellowship. So it's research intensive for summer. I did that my junior year, my summer going from junior to senior year. And I would say, so Chris Marsh, my mentor, actually suggested me to do that. So I applied for it. And that was the first time that I was really, really exposed to doing research intensely. And it was a great way to see that's what I wanted to do. And you get to, create your own unique project. You get to present it. You get to collect the data. So it's really kind of like doing your own mini thesis in like 2 months. It was a really great experience, and I think that definitely exposed me. Other than that, trying to prepare myself for a career, or trying to think about grad school and things like that, I even started before. Like I was going to the career center. I went to the career center when I was at UCLA. I went when I was here at UMD. I got my resume looked over. Like I said, I went to a few networking nights, which I would have done more. But like I said, if it's just for practice, go. And I also had gone, and I would suggest people do this as well. I went to my school, the BSOS, Behavioral and Social Sciences. I went to the school advisor, and I asked her to put me on the email list. And a lot of times, sometimes your email doesn't get on the list. You just make sure that it's on it. And they send a lot of job opportunities through that, internship opportunities, job opportunities. So they come through your inbox, and you just decide if you want it or not, So I did that. So there's a lot of ways outside of the athletic department that you can find and utilize to help you. But now that Maryland made it here, you guys have everything. So
Chill on us. But when Saint talked to us, dog, because you were playing pro and then somehow studying for the LSAT, like help us connect the dots.
My experience goes back to what Mikella was saying. So it's okay to want to do a lot of things, right? So there is nothing wrong with that. And then ultimately, as you will see, it will come down to just one, right? So for me, when I was playing pro, I wasn't thinking about grad school then. It was at the end when I decided season was finishing, and then I was considering whether or not I wanted to return for a second season or I wanted to go to a different team. I was like, well, what if I can say that? What if my career does not last as long? Because when I was in Maryland, the doctor had already told me, well, we're going to remove half of your meniscus, and then you're going to have probably another 7 years left to play, including those last 2 years you have left in college. So I was like, well, if that's the case, by that time, I probably had like 3 or 2 solid years left without having any knee problems. So I started thinking about grad school. To be honest, I considered an MBA. In fact, I actually applied at American and got into American for an MBA. I just didn't pursue it because my visa status had not been adjusted on time. So I couldn't start school. I couldn't get the loans I wanted. So I contemplated public policy with Penn State, right? Ultimately didn't go either because I thought my visa was going to be changed and I didn't change on time. So that's when I was working with State Farm. And while working for State Farm, that's when I actually started thinking about grad school and then do the law, that's when I studied for the LSAT. So I studied for the LSAT while I was working full-time and a part-time job coaching on the side. So, I mean, that was a little bit tough, but it was doable. I mean, that's what we get as student athlete. That's the privilege we have. We think about things, we do it, and we're competitive about it, and we ended up doing it. So that's what drove me to do it, and I did it, and then successfully. So yeah, this was basically the process behind thinking about attending grad school.
That's good. And so talk to us more, both of you, about really community building. It's something y'all alluded to earlier. And so not just, coming to College Park, which is its own community, of course, But then of course, coming from LA, coming from your home country, you're now living in St. Louis. Like, how have y'all really built and found community in those respective areas, whether those were international peers and or not, or domestic students as well?
I can start off. I think if I think about my entire college experience, I am grateful for this, but I've been able to find some really, really great friends and great mentors throughout my college experience. Friends, obviously your team becomes your family, just as you would have big brothers, big sisters, little brothers. Some are annoying, some are not. You love them all. So, you really get that family vibe. But I think it's so important, and I kind of saw this or experienced this through McNair, making friends outside of the athletic department, and especially as an international student. I know the soccer team has a lot of international students, but some teams don't have a bunch of international students. There's not so many people that you can relate to. But making friends outside of the athletic department that have same interests as you will and they talk about their experience. All is your friends, your athlete friends, athletic department. You guys all live the same lives. So knowing and sharing experiences with the people that have same interests but different experiences was a rewarding thing for me. And I would say that trying to be as I don't want to say alert, but being able to recognize people that could be really mentors and kind of making sure that you build that relationship, I think is really important. I don't think I would have had the relationship with my mentor that I had if I hadn't. She came into class and she presented something. I wasn't even in her class. She came into class to have a discussion or something. And I was like, I really like this person. I love what she does. Let me just shoot her an email. So I shoot her an email and I'm like, hey, I really love when you came to class. I'm not going to take any of your classes, but I would love to chat with you. And that's how we kind of started that relationship. So being able to reach out and recognize the people that you kind of see yourself in. And, I think, I don't know if we want to touch into this, but seeing, being able to see representation. This was a Black professor that I hadn't had the experience of really seeing that when I was at UCLA. So that was a really good thing when I was here. And then I saw there's a lot of Black professors here, there's a lot of successful Black people, which is really great. So trying to be able to milk those relationships, I think.
Unfortunately, not everybody is as smart as Mikella when you're in college. So I did not have this thought process when I was in there, right? However, what I did, I think it's the nature of it's the type of person I am. So I was actually friends with almost everybody. So I had probably as many friends outside of sports that I had compared to all the student athletes. So I would study outside with other students. I would basically go to their places, of course, enjoy and have some parties with them and all. So that actually helped me build a lot of relationships outside of sports. And strangely enough, one of the kids, when I was in my stat class, we studied together, right? So he currently is a lawyer. He is in DC, and then we've been connected for a while now. So he actually sort of taught me the process of getting like a judicial internship. So basically, how to get to work for a judge, right? So he helped me with the process and everything. But that relationship started in college, from studying stats together, and then he was not a student athlete. So that literally goes back to what Mikella was saying. Build outside relationships, talk to everybody.
Right.
That's real. I tell people all the time, if someone says they want to be a doctor or a PA or a lawyer, as a sophomore, stay close to them because they're gonna be a doctor, a lawyer, a PA. Your friends will be doctors and lawyers and PAs and journalists and everything else, but that's not a dream. They legit telling you what they're gonna do during their undergraduate career. But as we push towards the end, definitely have a couple more questions for y'all. But one of the biggest things that I've heard in my own experience, again, working at Maryland, but also having conversation with colleagues across the NCAA, is that a lot of people do not know a lot about the international student athlete experience, right? And so if you could tell anyone listening and or watching, like what does it mean to be an international student athlete as a current student athlete? But then again, how did that prepare you for your career as an alum?
Well, I could go with that one. So basically, first thing you will know, like Mikella said earlier, there will be a culture difference. There will be a culture shock, and then you will hear people call you, "You're so foreign." So that is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I get that still, even now. I still get it, right? So it's okay. You'll need to adjust to a different culture, right? Something you didn't know before. So you'll need to make new relationships. You will need to learn, even if you speak English, you will need to learn in a different structure, right? Everything else is different. So these are things you sort of need to prepare yourself mentally for. Of course, it's doable because we all have done it after we make it through. But you still need to actually think about that. So as far as like on the athletic side of things, right? So you will need to rely on your teammates a lot. So when I came here, I probably spoke 5 words of English, right? And then I went to when I went to school, so I had to take basically it's like a ESL class, right? English as a second language type of thing. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that.
Mhm.
That's where I was for one semester. That's all I was taking, like English, not English 101 or 101X or anything like that. Straight English to learn English, right? So yeah, this process wasn't like it wasn't easy, right? So I had to speak, I had to learn a lot of things. So it took some adjustment, but I did get some help.
Yeah.
So in that sense, so when I was with my teammates out, we were traveling and all, I wasn't speaking much because there weren't much I could say. But that didn't prevent me from say whatever it is I could say. So whatever I understood, that didn't prevent me from laughing at it when they were making jokes, right? So I think that helped me a lot. So as an international student, you're gonna have to rely on your teammates if you're an athlete, right? And if you're not an athlete, you will have to form those types of relationships of people you can trust and people you can go to guide you when you need guidance, because you will feel lost and lonely and homesick a lot. That's part of the things, right? But you'll get through it.
Awesome.
Yeah, a lot of the same things. I would say, being an international student, having the opportunity to, get your school paid for and come to a foreign country and play a sport you love is a unique experience. It's a great opportunity. And I think that, the situation is different for international students. You're not at home. It's a bigger decision than living 30 minutes away or going to your state school. It's a bigger decision. There's more at stake. So there's a little bit more that goes through your mind than a regular student. I personally hadn't had this, but obviously I know a bunch of my international student athlete friends keeping up with your visa, making sure that everything's in order. You don't have mom and dad that's here, so you need to do your own thing. You need to take care of your stuff. So there's a lot of things that go into being an international student athlete that don't necessarily apply for domestic students. I would say exactly the same thing. Culture shock and language barriers, hard. And you will get teased. You'll say that little word that sounds they get what you're saying, but it's a little different, and they'll tell you about it, and you're like, oh, man. So you'll get that, but it gets easier. Obviously, we've all done it. We've gone through it. And at the end of the day, I think that being that you've lived in 2 different countries, you know more than one language, you have this unique experience as a international student athlete, you'll come out of it a very well-rounded person with a lot of skills, and I think it'll be maybe a little complex to navigate that process throughout, maybe your career process, because you have to think about, I can actually go home, I can actually stay here. There's a lot of options, but I think it's a very good thing. So I would say try to think about your unique experience, but also trust the skills that you learn as a student athlete throughout your 4 years, and trust in those, and that'll take you through.
Exactly. And I want to add this as a student athlete. So especially right after you graduate, right? So if you enter the workforce right after that, if you didn't, let's say you didn't go play pro after that, right? So you will find yourself sort of in a sense, I don't want to say like you're starting behind, but you will find yourself needing a little bit, like sort of trying to rely on people a little bit more. That's just because of the privilege we had as student athletes, right? So you might find that some people are starting ahead of you. So somebody who came from an Ivy League school, but who was on his own or her own the whole time, right? So when they start, we might start in the same position. They might start and then getting more money for the same position, right? But they might start like being able to figure things out on their own before you could do it, right? But not because they're smarter than you. It's just because you just have to reteach yourself the process. And once you get that and you find out your competitive nature as a student athlete, you will just turbo pass all these people, literally. And then I think that's my experience right now, to be honest. So even if you think that you're feeling behind or you start behind, you're not as confident in as your peer or your coworker, trust me, just teach yourself the process. Once you learn that, you'll see that you'll be bursting past these people.
That's awesome. That's super awesome. I'm gonna transition us to segment 3. I would really focus on staying connected. And so how do you stay connected to Maryland since you all have become alums? So whether that's the athletic department or the institution itself or the program, your individual programs as well.
I think it was a little easier for me. Well, obviously I graduated last year, so it's a little easier for me. But I'm also still involved with the athletics department. I still have a great relationship with my coaches here, and faculty and staff, obviously. Once you graduate and they send you that email about being part of the M Club, sign up and do it. So that you can get the notifications, try to check in here and there, follow some Instagram accounts so that you kind of see what's going on. Try to pop in and reply to your emails when you have faculty and staff and coaches that send you emails to see how you're doing. Reply to them and don't burn bridges. So yes, yeah.
That is important. I just wish I had, I thought the same way she did when I was in college. She's just, I probably would have been like the president of the United States by now.
Hey, you walk so she can run. You walk so she can run, Saint.
I guess, right? So, yes, it's true. Whatever she just said, it is true. Staying connected really might sound hard, but really it isn't. Just the emailing list thing she just said, right? Just stay in the email list for it. Athletic department, I've got their emails all the time, right? Even BSOS, the college I graduated from, right? I get the emails all the time. So if I see something they post that I'm interested in, guess what? I will reply and I'll try to reconnect with them. They will be more than happy to help you. And then, of course, the M Club, as a student athlete, this will be basically one of the top resources you will have in terms of networking and financial help. So currently, actually, for the past year, I would say last semester and this semester, they had paid basically for my law school books. That's like thousands of dollars. Basically, they give me, unfortunately, they helped me. I got the scholarship, the M Club scholarship, postgraduate scholarship. So that basically paid for my law school books this semester. That saved me $4,000 or $5,000 hands down.
That's awesome.
So yes, stay connected. Don't be afraid of reaching out to people. They will be more than happy to help you. And you're not alone. As a student athlete, you're not alone. If you need something, just reach to anybody. Even if they cannot help you, chances are they will direct you to the right person.
Yeah, Mikella, make sure you apply, and everyone else listening who are alum, make sure you apply for the M Club scholarship. I think it's $4,000 or $5,000 stipend.
$5,000.
Yeah,
that's awesome. That's huge help. That's huge help.
Yeah,
it is. So last thing, right? Can't let y'all go without y'all leaving at least one final gem, one final piece of advice for both current student athletes, alums, international students, not or domestic students. But just what's one final gem y'all want to leave with the people in our community today? We can start with whomever wants to go first.
Saint, go.
All right. See, I was gonna let her go first so I could pick her brain and what she says. She's like, no, say try not to sound as smart as she does. That's all. So I would say for me as somebody, so basically I'm from a developing country, right? So when I came to the US, basically I just came from the dark and being in the light. Saying dark as in not because of course I'm dissing my country or anything like that. Obviously that's not, I would never do that. But it's just to show how different things were and how accessible a lot of things became after I came here. So what I would say is just do not be afraid of taking advantage of these resources available to you. As a student athlete, right? So a lot of times we're competitive, we want to do things on our own. You really do not have to do anything on your own at all, especially in college. In college, and as a student athlete at Maryland, knowing the resources they have, they might even have it better now. Mikella will probably be able to talk to that more. They probably even have it better now than I did. And I knew I had a lot when it comes to resources available to me. So take advantage of that. Use it to the best of your advantage, the best of whatever you need to do to use it and do that. And also just make friends, right? Open up, right? Of course, your teammates will probably be your first friends, but don't just close your circle just to student athletes. Just open it up. Just make friends with everybody, and then yeah, you might reap great benefits from that, basically.
Awesome.
Absolutely. I wouldn't change anything of what Saint said. Absolutely. I would say, and this has kind of this came up in our conversation today. Your college career, your college athletic career doesn't have to be end all be all. You come to college to play sports, but you're also the student. You're trying to build your career, your athletic career, just as much as your academic one or your actual professional career. So I would say, use college as a vessel. It's not, and your athletic career doesn't have to end there. As we said, we're still involved in sports. We said this in the beginning. Use everything you have here and to carry you throughout. And I think a lot of people go into post-grad depression and such because, you graduate and you're like, whoop, what do I do now? I'm not a student. I'm not a student athlete. I'm not a student. I'm not an athlete anymore. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't all have to end in college. So, use everything you have in college and make the best out of it and then use that for the future.
Well said, both Saint and Mikella. I will say to Saint's point, yeah, we have a worldwide Terps, well, y'all as alum have a worldwide Terps group of international student athletes that's building and growing right now. So we'll be sure to bring y'all back and participate in those meetings as well to connect with current international student athletes. It's pretty dope.
I'd love to.
Awesome. Well, to close us out, my one final gem, well, I guess I have two, well, really three. One, thank you again, Maggie, for creating this series. Two, Mikella and Saint, thank y'all, future Dr. Mikella and future Saint Esquire, for coming and participating in our alumni athlete to alumni webinar series. But three, this is a no-brainer, but y'all have the best hair of anyone that's been on this Zoom and whoever will be on Zoom in the future. So y'all are definitely hair goals. And if you're tuning in via audio, make sure you check out the YouTube channel on our Maryland Made Terps YouTube channel. But for everyone else, again, thank you again for tuning in. Look forward to having more conversations with athletes who will become alum, who are doing great things in both their local and global communities. Peace out.
Thank you.
Thank you.